Production of Ruckus is made possible through the generous support of Dave and Jamie Cummings, the Hartwig family, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Welcome to Ruckus, our weekly food for thought fight over the news of the day and the trends of the times. I'm Mike Shannon. The Ruckettes join me shortly, and our topics this week. The governor says don't count on higher taxes in Kansas. Some say don't discount chances for a Kansas International Airport, and do count on a major battle for control of the U.S. Supreme Court, plus roast and toast. But we start with our Newsmaker segment and get the perspective of a veteran Kansas side lawmaker on issues local, national, and beyond. Representative Kevin Yoder of the 3rd District, a Republican, is now in his 4th term in the U.S. House, easily winning re-election last November. Before going to Congress, Yoder served in the Kansas legislature. He's back home while Congress is in recess, and we are pleased to welcome Congressman Yoder of the 3rd District to Ruckus. Good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me back on the program.
And you represent in this metro area Johnson and Wyandotte counties.
And a little bit of Miami.
Right. Now that you're back home and had a chance to talk to some of your constituents, what are they talking about?
Well, they've certainly have a lot of opinions about what's happening in our country right now. You know, President Trump was elected as a change agent, and things are changing, and that's been disruptive and certainly caused some folks to call in and share with us their opinions, which frankly we appreciate. We've heard from a lot of people on a lot of different topics. Certainly people are concerned about some of the executive orders. They're concerned about what's going to happen with their health care. And some of the appointments, Betsy DeVos, for example, all those things have been examples of things people have called in.
What do you think of these town hall meetings that are going on around the country with some of your colleagues where they're getting shouted at and shouted down and waving placards in the audience? Do you think that's genuine frustration and anger?
Yeah, I do. I do think people are frustrated and concerned that maybe their government isn't going to go in the direction they want it to go.
The direction the voters selected in the election?
Right, just a few months ago. But there are folks who, didn't win the election or don't like who was elected. And nationally, I think they've got some frustrations about Donald Trump, and they're expressing that. Most of the concerns we've heard are less about maybe my representation, but more about concerns about Donald Trump.
Well, you were a Trump supporter, were you not, during the primary?
We supported him over Hillary Clinton, for sure.
Well, yeah.
In the primary, he was not my first choice. I liked Marco Rubio and a number of other candidates first, but once it came down to a choice between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, we leaned his direction.
What do you think about his performance thus far? He has gotten a lot done.
Well, I think when he focuses on, he was a change agent. When he focuses on reforming Washington, creating jobs and growing the economy and national security, I think he has broad public support. I think some of the ways in which he's done that, the refugee order was, I think, the implementation of it, I had some grave concerns about. I think, some of his appointments, we mentioned Betsy DeVos. Mike, we have some of the best schools in America right here in Kansas. What we don't want is a new Secretary of Education changing how great our schools are and forcing us to apply some of these national standards.
All right, one of the things that people talk about a lot is a replacement for Obamacare. The Congress has voted to replace it. Have any final decisions been made? Well, on what to replace it with?
Yeah, so Congress is working right now. We have a number of committees working on solutions to replace the health care plan, and there's a division in Washington. Some people want to repeal it. Some people want to repeal and replace it. And I think what we all know is that...
Well, it's been repealed, right?
Well, it hasn't been repealed yet. A first step has been
taken.
Right, a first step has occurred, but it has not been repealed yet. I think most Americans agree that our health care system is broken and it needs to be fixed. I've been pushing back on Republican leaders who might not want to replace the bill with something that would be better. They just want to repeal it. I've listened to a lot of my constituents when I've been home. I had a group of constituents I met with this week that are all ACA supporters, because I want to make
Affordable Care Act.
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act supporters. Yeah, they like it. Some the folks who like it, trying to figure out what they like about it. And Mike, what I've heard is that we have to continue to protect people with pre-existing conditions. That we can't go back to a system in which people
keep children up to age 26.
Correct.
But I've heard Republican leaders like Paul Ryan and others say that's going to be part of the replacement.
That's exactly right. And we've been pushing on Paul and other leaders to ensure that they listen to those voices in our community. And what I've said, Mike, is that I represent Republicans, Democrats, and independents. And I'm their only voice in Washington. And so we've been trying to forge a consensus to figure out how we fix this broken healthcare system. And we have committees in Washington that are taking our input as legislators and putting together a proposal that I think will improve our healthcare system for all Americans.
Are you confident there will be a tax cut for corporations and for individuals this year? Income tax cut?
Well, I think what's going to happen is tax reform. Right now we have a tax system.
Well, the president says tax cuts, doesn't he?
I think there'll be a tax reduction, but I do think it'll be tax reform that's the key here. We've got a.
But what's the difference?
Well, we've got a tax code that's too large, too cumbersome, not simple. We're going to simplify the tax code. We're going to flatten it out, meaning we're going to eliminate deductions and exemptions and loopholes that many corporations use to not pay their fair share of taxes. So we want to make it fairer and flatter. And for some companies, that would be a reduction. For Americans, that would be a reduction. But for those who are cheating the code right now, taxes might go up for them.
There's been a lot of speculation now that your colleague, Lynn Jenkins, has announced she's not going to run for the Kansas GOP nomination, gubernatorial nomination next year. Can we get you interested in the governor's race?
Oh, I don't know. You know, we have so many big challenges in Washington, and we've just touched on some of them today with health care and tax reform. And I'm so focused on doing my job there.
Would you say no way you couldn't possibly consider that?
Well, look, I served in Topeka for a number of years. I was the appropriations chairman. I know the budget there. And I will tell you more than anything, Mike, I love our public schools. I love our community. I grew up in Kansas, grew up on a farm here. And now, Mike, I have 2 little girls. And I want to make sure they grow up in the greatest state in the country. And so I'll serve in any way that I can help improve, you know, the lives of our constituents. But right now I'm focused on serving in Congress.
Let me see how this sounds. Governor Yoder. Well, not bad, huh? Hey, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks for having me on the show.
That is Kansas 3rd District Congressman Kevin Yoder. Now let's meet the panel and start a ruckus. Mary Ann Murray Simons is a former journalist and now a freelance writer and consultant. Patrick Tuohy is the field manager for the Show Me Institute, a libertarian think tank. Jim Heater is a former city councilman and former CEO of the Greater Kansas City Chamber. And attorney Steve Marakian is with the law firm of Warsh, Hobbs, and Marakian. Thanks to all of you for coming in. It's good to see you again.
Thank you, Mike.
Likewise. All right, a lot to talk about. Let's get going. Usually, legislators hear their constituents plead for lower taxes, but not so in Kansas. Alarmed by recurring budget deficits, Johnson County voters and others sent new lawmakers to the Capitol intent on ending the income tax exemption for business owners and farmers and raising taxes for others. Last week, the legislature passed a measure that would raise taxes by $1 billion over 2 years, presumably covering a gap in revenues some believe is the result of income tax cuts in 2012. Governor Brownback, who initiated the lower tax program, remains supportive of it. So when the tax increase bill got to the governor's desk, what did he do? And then what happened, Mary Ann?
It's been a busy week in Topeka, and I think we're getting set for a return of a showdown at the OK Corral. The governor was given a bill from the legislature asking him to sign. He said he would veto, and by golly, he did. And the overrides were attempted. The House was successful by 1 vote. The Senate lost it by 3. So the issue of how do you balance the budget in Kansas has now been thrown back on the legislature, and they're really going to have to figure out between now and the end of the session what we're going to do to figure out the budget shortfall and how to fund it.
That's a budget shortfall not just for this year, but for the subsequent years.
Correct, right? Correct. And it's millions and millions of dollars. The question is, do you use increases in income taxes or sin taxes or rob from Peter to pay Paul to be able to pay for these budget deficits? And at this point, it's unclear how the legislature will come down, except to say that they are not supportive of what the governor is asking for, which is continuing the status quo, which has clearly not worked.
Well, Patrick, Governor Brownback called the bill a big retroactive tax increase. Was that what it was?
Oh, that's exactly what it was. You know, you've got to look at the totality of what's going on across the country. I think 25 states had budget shortfalls last year. 19 states have had revenues come below expectations so far this year. But one state is going to solve that by increasing taxes, and that's Kansas. What Kansas needs to do is actually cut its spending. They should have done this years ago when they cut taxes, but Kansas needs to look at its basic functions and see where there are efficiencies, where there are opportunities to save money.
Well, Steve, a lot of people are criticizing Governor Brownback for not working with the legislature on this and for vetoing the bill. Others say it was courageous and he stuck to his guns. What do you say?
Oh, I agree. I've been a critic of Sam Brownback in many ways, but I agree with what Patrick said, and I've said this before, Patrick, actually. The problem here is that we in this country seem to have forgotten that you can't simply tax and tax and tax just to get where you want to be. We have to cut spending. We have to balance. We have to live within our means. We've somehow decided in this country that whatever we want is okay. And the way we get it is we just tax people and then redistribute the wealth. The way to balance the budget is not just tax and tax and tax. You have to cut spending as well. He's also caught in the vice.
But he has cut spending, hasn't he?
He has.
Oh,
he has.
significantly.
He has. But the problem is the legislature, it's their job to balance this budget. And the way to balance this budget is cut your spending some more, increase your taxes appropriately, not just pass this massive tax increase, which basically is being done without the key factor, which has been created by the Supreme Court, which has overstepped its bounds, and it's that big elephant that's sitting out there. No matter what they do, no matter what they pass, unless the Supreme Court steps out of the way and says we're going to stop micromanaging and demanding that you pay X dollars for schools, we're never going to solve this budget crisis. But the Supreme Court despises Sam Brownback. This is mostly politically motivated, and right now, no matter what they do, they're always going to be hit with this fact of, well, we've now passed this bill. Let's assume he hadn't vetoed it, and the Supreme Court comes back in a few weeks and says, oh, by the way, we need $300 million more for the schools. It's nonsense.
I guess
he's doing the right thing.
I guess, Jim, Steve didn't get the memo that you're not supposed to criticize judges or courts. Is there a possibility that federal tax cuts and national economic growth might ease some of the problems in Kansas?
I think that's very unlikely, and frankly, I respectfully disagree with Patrick and with Steve and with Governor Brownback that what the legislature sent Governor Brownback was in some way or form or fashion an enormous tax increase, a retroactive tax increase. I think what the legislature sent was a fair and effective tax proposal to necessarily close the budget gap in Kansas created by the Brownback tax cuts. It was what the people of Kansas elected the legislature to do last November. It was very clear. It was almost a one-issue campaign, and they did precisely what the voters asked them to do, and Governor Brownback vetoed it.
But they may not succeed in the end.
It'll be interesting to see, because it'll be necessary, I think, to be a compromise between the governor and the legislature, both with respect to taxes and with respect to spending cuts.
And hopefully the issue becomes protecting schools and education in Kansas, making sure that we protect with a safety net those who need help, and having decent roads in the state of Kansas like we have in past years.
All right, we've got to move on to another topic. Steve Rose said it last week on Ruckus, and he said it again quite plainly in his weekend newspaper column, and I'll quote him. A lot of people scoffed when I suggested that if Kansas City failed to move forward with a new single-terminal airport, look out for Johnson County to grab the airport as its own prize. Scoff at your own peril, Kansas City. End of quote. Since the story surfaced, there has indeed been no shortage of scoffing, and still the future of Kansas City International is uncertain. The mayor and other civic and city leaders want a new one-terminal facility. Others just want renovations. The ultimate decision has to be made by voters. So, Jim, what can we expect next?
Well, I think it is highly, highly unlikely that you'll see a new airport built in Johnson County, Kansas. Having said that, I think that the stories that have surfaced in the last couple of weeks have probably given impetus to Kansas City, Missouri to
sort of a PR favor for people who want the one-terminal airport.
I think that's exactly right, and I'm one of those people. I think that anyone who has studied the issues relating to Kansas City International Airport recognizes that we need a new airport terminal. Keep in mind, the issue is not a new airport, it's a new terminal, or a very substantially remodeled existing terminal. I think a new terminal makes the most sense. And I think what you'll see now is once the April bond issue being proposed by Mayor James and City Council, the voters of Kansas City, Missouri, is behind us, one way or the other, I think you'll see a lot of momentum toward a proposal for a new terminal at KCI, and I think the Kansas proposal or the discussion in Kansas may be an impetus to that.
What do you see happening next, Patrick?
Well, scoffing is the kindest word I can think of for this. This is a fever dream. This idea that Kansas is going to build a new airport is a fever dream of consultants and people who make money from taxpayers. You know, we just finished a segment talking about whether or not Kansas has enough money to provide for its basics, and now we think they're going to invest $2.5 to $5 billion to a new terminal. It's ridiculous. And I'll take exception with one thing Jim said. I've been studying the airport for 3 or 4 years in Kansas City. I don't take a backseat to anybody on knowing the issues. The arguments the city is putting forward just don't hold up. They want to say the airlines have agreed to pay for it, to finance it. Simply isn't true. The airlines, have merely said we agree to pay rent, but rental agreements are 5 years at a time, 7 years at a time. The debt that the airport will be taking on is 30 years, and Kansas Cityans have to be sure not to make the same mistakes that they made in Sacramento and Indianapolis and around the country, where they built billion-dollar airports and lost flights.
All right, Marianne, let's say there is an election and Kansas City, Missouri voters say no, they don't want a new terminal for KCI. Then what happens? The city council does not have to have a public vote to move ahead.
Exactly.
Although I interviewed Jolie Justice last week, and she said politically we have to.
Well, because it's been promised.
We said we would do it.
Right.
But if it is so important, why doesn't the council then just act on its own?
Well, I totally agree with what Jim said. The positive momentum based upon the discussion going on in Johnson County is going to fuel this, is going to move it forward, is going to help with the education campaign that did not happen before this came out, unfortunately, earlier. What needs to happen is a regional view of how we look at the airport and how it serves the entire, not only metropolitan area, but multiple states that are around this part of the country. And KCI is where the expansion needs to take place, be it a new terminal or a renovation of the existing terminal. I agree, I think it's a new terminal.
Well, Steve, you're big in Johnson County. Everyone knows you there and tells you they see you on Ruckus and have heard you on the radio over the years and go to your law practice. Are you hearing a lot of your friends and colleagues saying, boy, I hope there's a Johnson County International Airport?
No, in fact, most of them have said essentially what has been said here and what Patrick said so eloquently, and that is people think it's not ever going to happen. I'm not quite so sure I agree. I think it is a pipe dream in that sense, and I think Steve is overblowing it perhaps in terms of the likelihood. However, the reality is that with the growth in Kansas City and the way the growth has been in southern part of Johnson County and moving down toward Gardner and out in those areas in Lawrence and so forth and so on, the notion that there might be a large airport in that area to serve a huge mass of population and growing population is not far-fetched. Now, the problem is that I don't know that this community can be well served by two multi-billion-dollar airports. And I do agree with Patrick in terms of the idea that Kansas is not in a financial position right now, even with federal funding, though the president seems determined to spend $1 trillion on infrastructure to build a new airport. By the same token, I'm still not sold on what happens at the Kansas City airport, whether it's a one-terminal deal or renovations. All I know is the Kansas City Council and the mayor have done an absolutely abysmal PR job in selling what they want to get done. And unless they do, if this thing falls apart, then there could be some momentum for something in Johnson County.
And on that positive, upbeat note, we'll move ahead. If you think you've seen some really tough battles, strong language, brutal criticism, ad hominem references between Democratic senators and President Trump, you're absolutely right. But those are only the appetizer. The main course is on the way, and it's the battle to seat Trump's nominee, Judge Neil Gorsuch, on the U.S. Supreme Court to succeed the late Justice Antonin Scalia. The Republican-controlled Senate left the seat open most of last year in the hope a Republican would win the White House. Of course, one did, as he often reminds us. The hope of controlling the U.S. Supreme Court by a one-vote margin may be the prime reason many Republicans uncomfortable with the idea of a President Trump finally gave him their vote. Do you agree with that assessment, Steve Marakian?
Well, not only do I agree with it, it's been well documented in terms of the polls and various kinds of interviews and studies that have been done. I will tell you, I personally told you many times on this program and privately, that was the primary issue for me. I was not a big Donald Trump supporter for many reasons. I could not vote for Hillary Clinton. The one thing that sold it for me ultimately was the U.S. Supreme Court. it turned out exactly as I had hoped it would. And that is, we now have not only a president who I hoped would nominate someone who was well qualified and would be a good judge, but has done so. The discussion right now with regard to Neil Gorsuch is more distressing to me than I think I can remember in my lifetime. This is not only a qualified jurist, he is such an eminently qualified jurist and such a decent man and a good judge that the notion that we're going through this debate, and if I hear Merrick Garland mentioned one more time, my head's going to explode.
He was Obama's nominee for that Supreme Court seat who never got a hearing.
He never got a hearing because if the Democrats had been in control, Neil Gorsuch wouldn't have gotten a hearing, okay? This is the way politics works. We've all said it many times. It's ridiculous to say it again, but I'm going to say it. Elections have consequences. Schumer, Obama, these people all were on record saying, basically, when it was their turn, saying they would never, ever have allowed a George Bush nominee to go forward in the election year. Politics is what it is. But now we are where we are, and we have a nominee who everyone who has any sense and anything other than the most extreme ideologue would say, okay, even the left-wing ABA has said, this guy is eminently qualified. He is going to be approved. This nonsense of not having improved and going through this nuclear option and so forth tells us where we are in American politics.
Jim,
this man should be a judge. He's going to be a judge in the Supreme Court, and we need to move forward with a 5-4 Supreme Court one way or
As
another.
I was saying, Jim, I know you're a Harvard-trained lawyer, so you have a lot of knowledge of such things. We're talking about this man as being a conservative judge. What does that mean?
Well,
generally speaking.
Conservative judges, there are two ways to look at that. One of them is the positions they take on certain issues, for example, pro-life versus pro-choice. That would be an example. Another is to look at the way they interpret the Constitution. Some refer to judges as activist judges. Frankly, I think that's a misnomer and it's a political word. But the question really is whether a judge looks at the Constitution of the United States and interprets it literally word for word, or whether the judge looks at what the framers of the Constitution clearly intended as a matter of principle and applies that to today's world. And I think that's the difference between a, quote, liberal judge and a more conservative judge.
Would you have any qualms about Gorsuch being confirmed, even though I know you're a Democrat?
You know, I'm going to disappoint Steve because I'm going to use Merrick Garland one more time.
Oh, my head's going to explode.
Oh, no.
Your head should explode, Steve. More frequently than it does, perhaps. But, you know, I think what the Republicans...
There's nothing in there, Jim,
what Mitch McConnell in the Senate and the Republican senators did with Merrick Garland really highly politicized what is always a political process, but highly politicized it. I think that's why you're seeing, in part, the discussion you're seeing around Merrick Garland. I also think that the notion of 60 votes, the filibuster rule, is a good idea for Supreme Court justices. A Republican justice is going to, president is going to appoint a more conservative justice, a Democrat a more liberal justice, but good for them to be somewhere in the middle, which is what a 60-vote Senate requirement
Bader
would be.
Ginsburg is in the middle. We've got to move on real quickly. Are you concerned about a Gorsuch appointment to the court? Do you
I'm
think
not.
it will destroy America?
My most favorite part of this campaign, and I will call it that, are the advertisements that have been all over national television saying what a great guy he is and how he needs to be a
Gorsuch? And the irony here that the peril for liberals is that Gorsuch may be more likely to vote against a Trump administration and its actions than Scalia was. And so I think this is an opportunity for them to strike a blow.
All right, and now we head to the soapbox for Roast and Toast, where the Ruckettes have 30 seconds each to celebrate or decimate people and events in the news, and we start with Jim Heater.
Mike, I'd like to toast the Kansas City Star for an article it published on the front page of the Star on Monday of this week, touting Mayor Sly James and his effort really to turn the page to get more of our young people in Kansas City and surrounding areas to read at the third grade reading level. There's probably nothing more important in our community than that. The science shows very clearly that if an individual, as a child, reads at the grade level at third grade, they're going to be successful in our society. If they don't, not such a good chance of that. And what Mayor James and Turn the Page have done is to engage the community in this, and the Star's article helps that further that engagement. So I toast the Kansas City Star for a great lead article on Monday.
Marianne.
I'd like to toast a 9-year-old Kansas Citian, Avery Jackson, who was in Jefferson City this week testifying before the legislature about the importance of allowing children, be they transgender like Avery or not, to be able to go to the bathroom at school in a bathroom that they identify with. She is in a perfect position to be able to hold a national and international spotlight around what a transgender child looks like. At 9 years old, she knows what's the right thing to do. I hope the Missouri legislature understands that as well.
Steve.
My roast is for Mary Sanchez and her star cronies for dishonest fear-mongering regarding the president's immigration policies. Facts are a troublesome nuisance, but here they are. Trump arrested about 700 illegals. 75% had committed serious crimes. Obama deported millions of illegals. Only about 50% had committed any crimes. FDR locked up thousands of Japanese American citizens who had committed no crimes. Fact, if you're a citizen and a dreamer, you're not going anywhere. But if you're illegally here and you violate our laws, the party's over. Get your alternate facts straight and stop the blather.
Patrick.
My roast today is for Mayor Sly James, the city council, and city leaders for their awful Go Bond campaign that they are running. I've been to a number of town hall meetings, and the mix of massaged finances, half-truths, and assumptions that would make Bernie Madoff blush is beneath contempt. And in fact, what makes it worse is that the campaign is being funded by a number of Kansas City corporations who do not pay their own property tax. If Kansas Cityans want to address the important matters of infrastructure, they deserve a campaign that speaks truth and transparency.
I guess you're not voting yes. And finally, a toast to the historians who took part in the C-SPAN presidential rankings. As usual, Lincoln came in first. Saving the Union is hard to overlook. Our first president came in second. The Roosevelts ranked third and fourth, Franklin edging out Teddy. Eisenhower was fifth, one spot above Truman. Harry would have loved that. And President Reagan ranked ninth, should have been much higher. Barack Obama came in 12th. Who would have guessed that historians have such a good sense of humor? And that is Ruckus for this week. We're back next Thursday at 7 for the Ruckettes and the crew. Mike Shannon saying thanks for watching and good night.